the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers. Boy, do we have a good one for you. It's not just a regular old Mock Draft Monday. It is the first edition in the Collaborative Mock Draft Series. And to join us, we have the Bootleg football boys. We've got Brett Kollmann. We've got Snyder, who do a phenomenal job covering the NFL draft and so much more over on their YouTube channel, Bootleg Football. Fellas, thank you so much for being our first guest for this podcast series. We could not have started it any other way. Appreciate you guys joining us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us. A little 2-on-2 action to kick us off.
I'm so excited for this one, man. Connor, this is something that you and I were talking about. What were we going to do getting down the stretch? People have heard us do so many different mock drafts over the last 2 months. So we wanted to bring some new voices in. I'm excited because me and you get to team up. We never get to team up. It's always me versus you in the mock draft format. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be us versus them, if you will, going down a brand new first round mock draft. So Connor, I'm excited about it, man.
Yeah, we finally won't be at each other's throats for one episode, so it'll be
we
really
will.
good.
It'll just
we
be
will. We won't
like
agree
a
on any
marrying couple. You know, that's what it'll be now.
True, and it's a good time to tell everybody this mock draft will be a little different than what we've done in a sense, where this is what we would do. This is not what we think will happen, and I think that does create a competitive layer to it of how rankings are stacked, of how things might be differing from team thresholds that we were joking about off air. All of that stuff can be off the table. If you want to take a 5'9" wide receiver, go for it. If you like him, it doesn't matter. So we're going to have a lot of fun with it today.
I feel like you were subtweeting some certain teams there, but I'll leave that to the audience. I'll leave that
not at all
to the audience to decide who would be doing that. Guys, before we get things kicked off to EJ and Brett, I just want you guys to know that this happened. This all started like 3 or 4 weeks ago when we got a comment from somebody who was like, have you ever thought about doing collaborative mocks? And if so, please do it with the Bootleg football guys. So y'all were literally the very first one that our fans wanted to do this exercise with. So I'm so glad that we actually get to make this happen. This could be a blast.
Yeah, hey. Bootleggers are a voracious group, man.
They've infiltrated our comment section in the best way possible.
Yeah. Well, y'all do fantastic work. That's why they wanted to see it.
They've got skills, though. They've gotten us opportunities all over, and we're really happy to have this one. But I don't know, Brett, if we have ever been cast as peacemakers before.
No. And I'll have you know, we're going to instigate some shit. So,
yeah,
have fun.
I think that's a new one for us. So we're looking forward to it. And again, getting the chance to say what we would do, as opposed to, you see a lot of predictive mocks. Everybody says, well, they've done this in the past, and I think they'll do this, and the new GM likes this. And we're going to throw that out today. We're just going to do what we think would be really fun for the teams. And I think that'll make a more fun draft all the way down.
Yeah, I agree completely. You guys are picking for the odds. So speaking of instigating, I can't wait for you to get to number 13 for the Jets and offer that pick for Aaron Rodgers just to see what Connor's reaction is going to be. But, we're going back and forth. It's still going to be a back and forth thing. Brett and EJ are going to pick for the odds. Connor and I are going to pick for the even. So you'll get to hear us kind of talk these things out, see where our thought processes are. And as EJ said, and Connor said as well, this is what we would do mock draft. So it's going to look a little bit different. And we wanted to set it up like this because it allows us to get into the minds of our guests a little bit more and really hear what they think about these certain prospects and the fits that they might have for this NFL draft. You guys are up at number 1 overall. EJ, I know you're a big time Bears guy. I've been on your Bears podcast before. So I would love to hear you talk through the trade from them going from 1 to 9. Obviously, we could talk a little bit more about the Bears when we get there at number 9. But just before you guys pick for the Panthers at 1, walk me through what they gave up to get to number 1. Were you happy? What you thought Ryan Poles did throughout the process? And then we'll have you guys eventually make a pick at number 1 as well.
I was thrilled with Ryan Poles' move for several reasons. He needed to get more assets. He's in the rare position of having the number 1 overall pick and having a quarterback. They are in on Justin Fields, despite what people say. I think Justin knew that. I think Ryan knew that. And now the world knows that because they gave up the chance to do that at the top of the draft. The real genius of the Poles move with Carolina down to 9 is getting DJ Moore. There is not a lot available in free agency with wide receivers this year, and there is tremendous contract control. People forget DJ Moore is still really young, has been tremendously productive, and they needed a number 1. They didn't think they were necessarily going to be able to get it in the draft or through trade, and he held firm. He got Justin his target. He got a lot of assets that are going to help build this team. And they still are going to get a top player. They're still in the top 10. The only quibble I've heard is, there was the talk of the double trade down. Well, you guys know trades down both require two dance partners and are incredibly complex and can fall apart. So I think when it got just hot enough below boiling, Ryan Poles said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the bird in hand. I'm going to get these assets. I'm going to lock up a number one wide receiver for my young quarterback. I'm going to keep the ability to build the Bears. Couldn't be happier with what he did.
And then I'll go to Brett next, just for Carolina's side of things. What do you think? Do you think it was too much for Carolina? Do you think that was the going price? And then ultimately, I'll let that kind of usher into a discussion, and you guys could talk about who you want to take at number one overall if you were in charge of the Panthers.
I think the big thing is you have to look at the overall context of the organization, right? They traded away Christian McCaffrey and got better in the run game because, especially with the style they play, it's a lot of wide zone, a lot of split zone. As long as the crack is there's a lot of running backs in the NFL that can hit it. You don't necessarily need Christian McCaffrey to do that. Now, obviously, Deontay Foreman last year didn't bring the same receiving ability, but they ran the ball really, really well, especially behind the left side of the offensive line. And I think that they kind of saw this trade up to number one through a similar lens of we can give up DJ Moore because there's really good day two receivers in this class, and we could try to get some production through the aggregate. The only thing that we can't get on day two is a starting quarterback that's better than what we've had the last few years. They've been searching and keep striking out. They struck out on Darnold. They struck out on Baker. It hasn't worked out. So they have a firm belief that the guy they're targeting at the top, they can just get that piece and then fill in around because they have a lot of young talent, both on offense and on defense. And they think that they're just missing the quarterback and they can go on a playoff run, which the NFC South, sorry to say, Trevor, not super great right now. So if they can just get the quarterback.
Brady's coming back. He's going to come back. Don't worry about it.
Is he though?
Yeah, he's coming back. Yeah, he's coming back. It's fine. It's fine.
But that kind of leads us into, okay, well, then who do you take at number one? And even though personally, again, I'm a modern day alum, so I've been watching Bryce Young since he was 16 years old, slinging around on Fridays.
There we go.
Devastated that he left SoCal, but I get it. USC was in the dumps. Go to where you can win a championship, and he did so. I'm a big Bryce Young stan. I also acknowledge that I think stylistically and in terms of build, CJ Stroud, to me, is a better fit for the Carolina coaching staff. I have not actually asked EJ this yet. EJ, are you in on Stroud for this, or would you more lean towards Young?
I think our answer is strangely the same if it was me, and that is what we're doing here, so that muddies the water a little bit. I think Bryce Young is a better quarterback. I do think CJ Stroud is a better fit with what Frank Reich wants to do in Carolina. So it's a little bit of a shift here. Would we pull the trigger on Young? I don't know. We could mix things up at the top and do that. But in terms of what I think will happen, I do think it will be CJ Stroud at the top. I would actually be surprised and will be surprised on our live stream if it's Bryce Young at number one.
Well, I mean, shoot, he's the Vegas favorite at number one for a reason. Connor, I'll get your opinion in a second, obviously, because we'll be up with the Texans and then we could hit on that. But are y'all going to lock in CJ Stroud for your pick, or are you going to make it Bryce Young? What do you got?
I definitely would lock in CJ Stroud, just because I think he fits Frank Reich.
All right, there we go. CJ Stroud going number one overall. Don't worry, everybody. Not every pick is going to be that extensive. We won't be here for 5 hours, we promise. Although some of you in the comments love when we go a little bit longer on podcasts, but it's not going to be that long. But we definitely wanted to get their thoughts on the very top of the draft. Connor, that puts us up at number 2, and I think the decision's very easy for us. But just your thoughts overall. Levis? Yeah, of course. Tanner McKee, actually, PFF darling. What do you think about their analysis there? Stroud going number 1, and then I don't think I'm ruining any surprises with us going Bryce Young at number 2.
I'm with them in a sense that, when my rankings are published on the week of the draft, like final rankings, Bryce Young will be my QB1, and he's been for quite some time now. But that doesn't take away from Stroud and the importance of fit and the importance of also not betting on outliers. I understand teams not looking to do that. So, and listen, as we're about to analyze this pick, Trevor, it's not the end for Bryce Young. He's going to go number 2 if this happens,
Right.
and it's a pick we'll gladly make. So I think it's a good sign that we have 2 quarterbacks that you feel really good about them in this draft right now, today. We could feel great about Anthony Richardson in the future and a couple of these other guys, but I think these 2 can play as rookies. I think they can play at a high level. I think Carolina is a phenomenal landing spot for a rookie quarterback, whether it's Jim Caldwell, Josh McCown, Frank Reich. It's an unbelievable senior staff they put together, a good mix of senior staff and McCown, obviously, being newer to coaching at that level, but even when he was playing quarterback, he was like having a coach in that room. So that leaves us in a really good spot that the Texans, if the Texans were picking number 1, I think this is who they would take, honestly, when all is said and done. And it's probably why, maybe they weren't that aggressive to go with the pick swap to Chicago. I'd love to know those details after the draft, but I think it's safely Bryce Young at number 2. It's what we would do, and it's what would happen.
Ooh, I didn't even think of that until right now. Learning what the details might have been as like people are kind of getting out information.
What did the Bears have on the table?
Like, the Colts actually offered this, the Texans offered this. Like that's some spicy details that I'm looking forward to getting. I agree. I think that this is of course the Bryce Young selection here at number 2 overall. So we'll lock that in for sure. As much as the Florida Gator grad in me would love for Anthony Richardson to go as high as possible in this draft, it has to be Bryce Young. You look at the way that obviously everything happened with Deshaun Watson and with him exiting Houston. Like they need to, they cannot afford, if you will, to pass on the guy who has been so unbelievable and so obviously talented over the last 2 years in college football for what is a project in Anthony Richardson to achieve the consistency of the ceiling that you would need for him to have when Bryce Young has already shown time and time again. He is just a unbelievable quarterback, such a natural at the position. He just understands the playmaking so well. The game truly slows down for this guy, it feels like. So number 2 overall, we don't have to waste too much time on it. It'll be Bryce Young, which then puts the Bootleg boys back on the clock at number 3 overall with the Arizona Cardinals. I'm curious to hear what you guys are thinking with the Cardinals, as well as maybe potential trade down. People talk about this opportunity all the time. So if you want to do that, you talk that out as well.
So EJ and I were kind of discussing this before we went on.
That's good, because Connor and I don't discuss anything, and we literally plan the show on the show, and the listeners now realize that they are truly a part of the show because they're in the planning meetings, because we don't talk beforehand.
It's nice to kind of keep things spontaneous, but one of the reasons why EJ and I were talking about it is because we control both sides of a potential trade here. And we were talking about, what exactly are the Cardinals going to do? Obviously, the Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson or Jalen Carter, whoever, right? Great players. They got holes like everywhere. And they need picks. They need assets. They don't necessarily need to spend the 3rd overall pick to fill that hole, because this is a very talented defensive line class, and they obviously need defensive line anywhere. And so something that EJ and I were discussing, and EJ, I want to take your temperature on this, because the whole Tom Brady to Vegas thing that we all assume was going to happen fell apart. And because it definitely seems like Jimmy Garoppolo was a break glass in case of emergency thing, are we still thinking sending the Raiders up to 3 to go get a guy to develop behind Jimmy G?
This comes down to the conversation of who would they go to get, right?
Yes.
Stroud and Young are off. You're going to have to give up significant capital to move from 7 to 3. And it would be nice for Arizona, but it is also nice for the Raiders. And with their current coaching staff, I don't see them as a great fit to try and develop Richardson. And I don't think they're in on Levis at all. Certainly not trading up to get Levis now. If he falls to 7, that might be a different conversation. So while the Cardinals want to trade this pick, the most likely team they would trade it with is the Colts. And the Colts are sitting at 4, and they're pretty sure that the Cardinals aren't going to take a quarterback at 3. So why give up a pick when you're going to get the player anyways? So it leaves Arizona in a bit of a quandary. I don't think Vegas is sold for the 2 top remaining quarterbacks on the board, and certainly not to move up to do it. And I also think they're a little bit more in on Jimmy G than all their fans would like them to be. I believe they think that's their starter moving into the season. Whether or not you like that or not as a Raiders fan is a whole separate conversation.
So are you thinking stick and pick then?
I think it's going to be tougher to trade that pick for the Cardinals unless somebody is absolutely dead on locked on Richardson and does not want the possibility of him going to the Colts, because I think that is a real possibility.
Well, let me ask you guys this. At controlling Detroit, would you come up to 3?
I don't think I would, Trevor. Would you? I'm intrigued by coming up for Anthony Richardson, but I also think Detroit's in a spot where they can win with Goff right now and not have to surrender. I mean, even from 6 to 3, I feel like the assets are pretty significant in that move, unless Arizona just wants out of the pick no matter what.
Yeah,
I just think Arizona wants assets. That's all.
Yeah,
Arizona would definitely look to move down. It's so when I look at a potential trade up for the teams that we're controlling, my mind actually goes to Atlanta, and I wonder if Atlanta looked at passing up on Justin Fields a couple of years ago and kind of the quarterback situation that they've been ever since. Obviously, they didn't expect things to end the way that it did with Matt Ryan, but here they are. We've talked about Atlanta being a destination for Lamar Jackson. Why? Because it feels perfect, right? Arthur Smith, what he does in the run game, being able to marry that with the weapons that they have in the pass game with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Their offensive line up front are just a bunch of earth movers in the run game. Tyler Algier is a great guy to lean on as they continue to build out that room. Does Arthur Smith and do the Falcons look at Anthony Richardson's dual threat ability and go, this is the guy? This unlocks what Smith might really want to do on offense. And I just find it very interesting. Maybe it's just a straightforward thing, or maybe there's a hidden meaning to it. But I was very surprised that Atlanta came out right away and just said, no, we're not interested in Lamar Jackson at all. Because it's like, okay, this is one of the teams that should absolutely at least talk to the guy. But then, it feels like the NFL was kind of in on it and nobody wanted to do that. So they brought the price down. A little bit of collusion there, but well.
It's a little light collusion. That's
it's just a little sprinkle of collusion as the NFL typically does during the offseason. But that's all that to say. That's where my mind goes. Does Atlanta look at their quarterback spot, believe that this guy is so talented, unbelievable dual threat, could be perfect for what Arthur Smith wants to do? Connor, we control number 8. Do you think this is something that we should have the Falcons do and what we would do mock draft? Or do you think they should stay at number 8? What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they also have an infrastructure that Anthony Richardson doesn't have to play right away. They gave Taylor Heineke legitimate backup quarterback money if Desmond Ridder just doesn't have it in this camp or out of the gate, whatever road they go down. So do I think Atlanta does this? No, but this is what we would do. And I think we should explore moving up to 3. Atlanta's in no man's land. Like, yeah, maybe you get Christian Gonzalez there, and he's an awesome player, and you'd love to watch him in that secondary. But what is the future at quarterback for the Falcons? Maybe Ridder works out. That'd be great. Awesome for them. I can't sit here confidently and say that. I'd rather have a guy with all the tools in the world like Richardson waiting in the wings. So I think that's the play for us here, Trevor. I think Atlanta trying to get up to 3 from 8 to position themselves to take the 3rd quarterback off the board.
How do we feel? Because now we're in the negotiation room with the 2 gentlemen on the screen.
That's a stretch. I'm
looking at the draft chart, the draft pick evaluator, and we're at 1,400 points for Atlanta's number 8 overall. It's 2,200 for Arizona's number 3 overall. Connor, I feel like it would take at least a second this year.
Yep.
You don't want to give up a second next year, but like, what if they gave up a second next year and then also asked for the Cardinals 4th next year in return?
Yeah, a swap is reasonable, I think.
Yeah. What do you guys think about that? Does that get the deal done?
Yeah, I'm not the one on the phone, by the way. You got to talk to them.
That's right. All right.
I like it. I'm Atlanta.
Okay,
cool.
Right.
Sure.
How do you guys feel about it?
I'd be good with it because you're getting a couple extra top 100 picks. You're giving up a day 3. The Cardinals need all the assets they can get. So I feel comfortable.
And they want to get out of the pick. That's the biggest thing is this is their out, right? Other than this, I don't see an out. Just an aside to me that's fascinating. I spent a good couple hours yesterday with a hardcore ATL fan, one-on-one. I was taking him to the airport. It's my brother-in-law, basically, and he has followed the Falcons for 30 years. And I was like, all right, I'm going to pick your brain. I'm going to do a little pre-funk for tomorrow's podcast. Like, are you interested in Lamar? He's like, no, they're They're hard set on Ritter. I was like, well, what about Anthony Richardson? Because he lives in the South. He'd seen plenty of Anthony Richardson. He was like, they believe they're going on Richardson. They're not going for another quarterback. And I was like, that's interesting. That's not what I would have said. And again, this is what we're doing mock, but I think you get a little pushback from the ATL fans. They believe in Ritter probably more than we do. But in terms of the trade, yeah, God bless them. They're going to have to live with that one way or another. Might work great, might not. We liked Ritter, but it's a question of where you're going to go ceiling wise. As far as the trade goes, I think we'll take it because it gets us out of the pick and we stay high, right? This isn't like we're trading down to 25 and losing any possibility of getting what we might have taken at 3. We're going to get a similar asset, plus we're going to get more assets, and Lord knows we need them.
Okay, so then we'll make the deal happen. What we normally do on the show is the team, whoever's controlling the team that's trading, you still control the same team. So we'll move from Atlanta to number 3. We'll make the call at number 3. We'll take Anthony Richardson. So we will still be on the clock at number 4. And Connor, the motto of the show is Will Levis, you are in Indianapolis Colts.
Oh no.
God.
It always ends up here. It always ends up here. Now we're in control. So we don't have to do this.
I just wanted to see the reaction.
Dude.
The road's always
it's not even noon yet. I can't drink that much. God.
Brett's like, what did we do?
How did we end up on this podcast? Trevor, I will say, before we get to the Colts, I just want to say, how about the basketball trio of Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Anthony Richardson on an offense?
Dude,
it's pretty fun to think about.
If these guys go to the Pro Bowl, if there's a 3-on-3 game, it's over.
And
absolutely.
And your fourth man at that point is Cordero Patterson.
Oh, that's true. C-Pat off the bench? Fourth man? It's true. All right, what are we thinking for the Colts here, Connor?
I mean, we know Ballard has to take a quarterback. He has to.
I know.
I do not love this situation at all.
We kind of played ourselves here.
I'm not comfortable putting my name on Will Levis as a top 5 pick. That's what this comes down to. I'm not. So did we just take a quarterback because they have to? Or we did play ourselves, by the way.
Can you pretend it's Lamar?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you write the offer for Lamar Jackson at this point? Because you are in a corner and you have to get a quarterback. Yes. Let's not say pick. You have to get a quarterback. And at this point, like, go for it. Like, because I'm sorry, Lamar Jackson helming that offense. Yeah, I'm all in.
First of all, we will not slander Gardner Minshew on this podcast. We won't do it.
Fair. Very fair.
But
a quarterback.
I did want to say this because I texted PFF salary cap guru / free agency oracle Brad Spielberger about this and went, hold on here, Brad. The Lamar Jackson situation, giving 2 first-round picks to a team specifically. It's like, can that wait until after the draft? Like, can a team that has a top 10, top 5 pick who might be interested in Lamar Jackson, can they wait until after the draft and then potentially try to sign Lamar in its 2 future first-round picks instead of a guaranteed top 5, top 10? And he said, yes, the timeline does line up to where you can still do this after the draft. And so, Connor, we could operate under the thought that the Colts are going to do something else at quarterback and maybe take a guy like Paris Johnson Jr. to help out the offensive line.
Ooh.
Not
crazy at all.
Could potentially play guard for him. We think he's going to be OT1 off the board. Obviously, he's been fantastic at tackle as well. You don't have to fully rely on Bernard Ryman to play left tackle for you, even though I still think he's a good offensive lineman. I'm just spitballing here. What do you think?
No, they need offensive line help. It's no secret. I do think we have to operate just to save ourselves with our insane Lamar Jackson plan, which is awesome. It makes this pick a little bit more fun for the what we would do mock draft. I mean, you could talk me into Paris Johnson, who's the most prototypical tackle prospect in the draft. You could always talk me into Will Anderson in this spot. It's really premium defensive talent versus trying to get that franchise tackle, but if you're giving Lamar Jackson $200 million guaranteed or whatever it's going to end up at, are you just putting him behind no offensive line?
Probably
that seems
not.
A little bit insane.
Probably not.
I'm okay with taking Paris in this spot.
Seems crazy to not take Will.
It does. I get it.
Can I offer
Please.
a slight interjection that might
Please.
help you with this?
Please.
So the
Please.
Colts have the 7th highest cap space in 2024 at 100 million projected right now, based on over the cap.
Mhm.
Again, if they do it after the draft, if they do it after the draft, I believe because we're already past the January 31st date when they do contract checks, obviously the signing bonus would count for this league year, which right now they have 20 million. So they would have to do a little bit of finagling in terms of opening up money for a signing bonus. But all the other money that has to be guaranteed and put into the escrow account doesn't have to be done until March 31st, 2024. So Irsay would have some time to raise money to do that. And I'll tell you what, if they brought in Lamar Jackson, they could raise a lot of money in 12
it comes
months.
easier. No, that's a great point. It's a great point and makes this selling point of what we would do stronger, honestly. So
I'm in.
Trevor,
I
where do we land?
love
Go ahead,
this.
EJ.
Like both sides, you get your player now in the top 10, you get your quarterback. You don't have to put Will Levis in a spot where he really shouldn't be.
Key.
Yeah.
Like this is really good from just about every angle.
Connor, I feel like we can't overthink this and we have to take Will Anderson.
I think so too. I've kind of been letting that stew in my brain for the last 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And as much as like rule of thumb, it's just so hard to reach for need when a blue chip talent is staring you in the face. So I think Will Anderson ends up being the pick. And
cool.
Lamar, we know, can run for his life. No matter the offensive line.
I don't know about that. But you can go offensive line at different times when Will Anderson's staring you in the face. I think that's what you got to do. So Will Anderson, the pick at number 4. Lamar Jackson, you are an Indianapolis Colt, which puts the bootleg fellas back up on the clock at number 5.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm looking at our options. I'm between Tyree Wilson and Jalen Carter here.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Would Will have been the no-brainer if he made it here?
I don't know about no-brainer because we both love Tyree Wilson.
And John Schneider. Like saying no-brainer in Seahawks in the first round is like go ahead. Like feel free, take your life in your hands. But
Rashad Penny didn't surprise you?
I've given up trying to say. People are like, well, you live in the Northwest, you should know. And I'm like, no, that has nothing to do with it.
Doesn't work like that.
It does not work like that. The interesting piece here is, does anybody want any of those players? And I don't necessarily think they do, because there's still a couple here. If you're talking about blue chip defensive talents, it's not just one. If somebody was like, we got to have an edge coming out of the first round. Look, Schneider loves to trade down, and he would take those assets. But I don't think anybody's clamoring because they're like, if they take X, we get Y, or we still have the option to go get Y. So I don't know. If we wanted to shake it up here, and there's been a little bit of buzz, you all have probably heard it, that a lot of Seattle fans saying, no, we've taken a 180 and we're going character first. We built the whole team last year, character first. And I'm not besmirching Jalen Carter's character because we're not there. We don't have that information. His character might be just fine. His tape is better than just fine.
Yeah.
But there's that little thing about Seattle just kind of zagging until last year when they basically went straight down the board and just crushed everybody. And we all went, where's that been for 10 years? But there's that little zag out of Seattle, right? And I feel like they might just take Tyree Wilson because he's a hell of a player and he would look really good in their defense, make no mistake. So, Brett, flip a coin, Carter or Wilson, I'm fine with either one.
I'm going to err on the side of caution, which isn't that cautious because he's still amazing regardless, and say, let's go Tyree Wilson. And also, by the way, they brought in Coach BT Jordan, who's like one of the best pass rush coaches in the entire league. Ooh. So if there was anybody that was going to turn Tyree Wilson into like an absolute freaking superhuman, it's probably him. And I would be very much intrigued to see them work together.
All right, Tyree Wilson off the board at number 5 to the Seahawks. Connor, what are we thinking for Detroit here at number 6?
I mean, we have options. That's safe to say. I think that if Jalen Carter figured it out, this would be the place. He would just it would be scary. You're talking about scary stuff. This is interior of a defensive line that could use a talent like him. Obviously, there is risk associated with this pick. We don't know if Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are at the point of this. It's not a rebuild anymore. This was a competitive football team last year. Are they at the point where they start taking these level of swings? But for this situation, Trevor, it might be worth it. I mean, it's going to be a little hard to talk me out of Jalen Carter, especially with the free agency moves at corner they were able to pull off and the depth of this corner class with them also still picking at 18.
Yeah, the 18th pick sways me to think that you can take the Jalen Carter risk here at number 6. If they didn't have pick number 18, I would tell you that this one comes down between two selections for me, Jalen Carter and then Devon Witherspoon, a guy who we absolutely love at corner. I understand that they spent a lot of money at corner, but for as much as I love Emmanuel Mosley, he's coming off an ACL tear. And anytime you have a lower body injury as a corner, like that's just something that you got to deal with. Of course, people look at the upside of Jeff Okudah, but it's not solidified that he is going to for sure become a full-time starter for them in the years to come. So yeah, I like the signings. I like the moves, but again, if they didn't have 18, I'd probably be going corner here either way. But because they do, I do think that this is a team that you take the chance on Jalen Carter because the man was built in the lab. He's got unbelievable talent. Certainly when we looked at just the film, I had him as the number 1 overall player in this class. So I'm cool with the Jalen Carter selection here if you are.
Absolutely. Signed, sealed, delivered.
Let's do it. Jalen Carter to the Detroit Lions at number 6. Means you guys are back up with the Raiders at number 7. Had a little bit of a quarterback discussion with them about moving up. You decided not to do that. Will Levis is still on the board. Just throwing that out there. I don't know. I don't know if now it's still too early to drink.
I think EJ would throw me out this window.
Now it's too early to drink, Brett. But all right, I'll listen to you guys talk this out to number 7.
The only thing I'm terribly sad about here is that we missed Jalen Carter being a Raider by 1 pick.
Oh,
come on,
that would have felt like when Warren Sapp went to the Raiders.
It would have been fun. But left with a lot of good options for the Raiders here. Well, again, it's what we would do. Brett and I don't believe that Las Vegas is in on Will Levis. We just don't. I believe they will let others take their chances with Will Levis. Again, good prospect, but there are better prospects on the board here. And again, as the Raiders, you have things you need to build. You're happy with Jimmy G as your quarterback. I don't know. I'm thinking you're looking at top corner here.
Yeah,
Raiders. You get your choice.
We both love Witherspoon a lot. And he's somebody like Hobbs, when Hobbs is healthy, he's a top tier nickel.
Yeah, he's a great nickel.
You're looking at Duke Shelley and Amik Robertson outside. No shade against either of those guys, but I think Witherspoon's better. EJ, are we kind of in lockstep on this?
Yeah, it comes down, and I was going to lean on your expertise of zone or man in terms of bias, because I think Gonzalez and Witherspoon, you could shade either way. I'm not sad with either player. I mean, I would be thrilled for Raiders fans that they get to see either of those players. I think they are top tier corners. It really comes down to, do you want to play, more press? And if you do, Witherspoon's your guy, press and contact. If you want to play a little bit more in space, Gonzalez is adding that aggression, but it's nowhere near the level of Witherspoon is already at in terms of a physical impact from the corner spot.
I would say Witherspoon just feels more like a Raider to me.
I would agree.
Why don't we just go with that?
That works for me.
All right, there we go. Devon Witherspoon, number 7 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, I've heard similar that they're very in on this cornerback class, and there's a legit chance that one of the top corners, if not the CB1 in this draft, could go off the board here at number 7. You guys actually have 3 picks in a row if you're still controlling the Cardinals, because we had to trade back from number 3 to number 8 with the Atlanta Falcons. So that puts you back on the clock once again for Arizona.
We could just go back-to-back corner and just say, let's just take a good player and go Gonzalez.
I'm with you on that one, if that's the route you go.
Yeah, I'm looking at who's left on the board. They're not going to go after Levis. The receiver of your choice, no, you can do that later on. I don't think there's anybody that necessarily sways you. I'm starting to get into the JSN area where I would start thinking about it. It's not what I would do here with a guy like Christian Gonzalez still on the board. I think you're, again, same argument you guys used for Will Anderson. When you're staring at blue chip talent, you need it. You just take it.
Yeah. Let's lock in Christian Gonzalez. That'll give him a cornerback group at the moment. Marco Wilson, Christian Matthew, oh God, yeah, man, they really do need Christian Gonzalez.
They got thin fast.
I'm not going to read any more names,
bro.
It's
when Byron Murphy and Zach Allen signed elsewhere, I was like, who plays on this?
Caleb
defense?
Williams, you are an Arizona Cardinal.
Now he's getting in on it.
Man,
No, Connor,
they're in.
Connor,
on it.
that would have been my selection before I remembered that they actually pick at number 8 instead of us. I was already queuing up Christian Gonzalez to go to the Cardinals.
And to me, it sells home the point the guys drove when they got to pick number 3 of sell this pick for assets. You don't even have to charge a premium tax. Just get capable assets, and they did. They got the extra second rounder this year, which is a top 50 pick, and they got the pick swap of a 4 to a 2 next year, and they got Christian Gonzalez, which is a really, really good player.
Yes.
He's got all the traits in the world you want at corner for a defense that, I mean, spin the board and take any position. Just take the most talented one.
Yep. I agree completely. EJ, you guys are back on the clock, and your Chicago Bears are sitting here at number 9.
I'm excited for what they do here.
Yeah, to hear what your analysis is of the board as it stands right now.
So we have every single offensive lineman available, EJ.
Yep.
I understand this. I'm looking at the board right now going, all right.
He has a giant smile looking at all these names.
It is. It comes down to fit. And we had a long talk about whether or not we had a great podcast talking about offensive line. And of course, the question that comes up is Skoronski guard or tackle, right? We got to lean on Brandon Thorne, one of the outright experts in offensive line play. And his view is really that Skoronski is a blue chip guard and a red, for scouting parlance, tackle. A good tackle, could get to be a Pro Bowl tackle, might be an all-pro guard. So he believes he can play in either place, much like his predecessor, Rashawn Slater, who went to the Chargers with a very similar set of arguments. So a lot of people are linking Skoronski. He grew up in Chicago. He went to Northwestern. We won't mention that he was a Packers fan, but other than that, Skoronski is a hard link to the Bears. But, Poles is a former offensive lineman himself. He's doing a lot of work on the offensive line. He was all in at the Ohio State pro day. Obviously, they got 2 tackles that he was looking at. I think a guy like Anton Harrison goes later. Depends on what you think about Broderick Jones and whether or not they want to run that athletic wide outside zone. And it really just comes down to flavor because, like Brett said, we've got them all stacked on the board here. I don't discount the outside. Like I said, I'm starting to get into the JSN range, and you would be reuniting him with Justin Fields, so he'd be up to speed faster. And you look at that receiving core, you start talking about DJ Moore, JSN, Mooney, and then you're bringing in, a big slot that's got a lot of speed as a 4-pack and saying, "Ooh, that looks a lot different than what Chicago was staring down the barrel of last year." So, flavor for tackle is really where it comes in, and left or right. That's the other thing. Some of these guys I think are much better natural left tackles. Some of them are right tackles. I think the Bears really are looking for a right tackle. I think they like Braxton Jones and what he did, and with better support around the offensive line, which they're going to have through multiple additions. They already got a guard. I think they really are sort of locking into right tackle, and that makes this an interesting discussion. So, Brett, if you had to pick, who would you take?
So because of the right tackle thing where we're just not sure what's going on with Tevin Jenkins, and this has been an ongoing storyline for like 2 years now. An underrated Bears storyline is like, we're not sure if the Bears even like Tevin Jenkins. He gets on the field, he plays well, but there's just always been this background of, is he actually in the long-term plan? I would lean towards Skoronski because regardless of what happens with Tev, regardless of what happens with Whitehair, whoever stays healthy, the fact that you can put Skoronski anywhere means that you could just get your best 5 on the field and he'll fill in. So I feel better about Skoronski because of that. And we can just let them figure it out in August. And no matter what, they're getting better on the offensive line. Is that fair?
I think it is fair. And I don't feel bad in any way about Peter Skoronski as a player,
Yeah.
as a person, as an asset, as a flexible reason to say, we're not sure how this offensive line is going to shake out. Is Whitehair going to stay at guard? Is he going to go to center? Are they going to draft a center? They might, are they going to move the guard from left to right? We don't know. Are they set? What is Tev going to right tackle? There's still a lot of questions. With Skoronski, you get a sort of multi-chip piece that you can just put in there and go wherever you go. You got a really smart guy, great hand use, who is incredibly quick off the ball. He's good enough in the run game. He is not as powerful as Slater is, but he has power in the run game. It's kind of like a cure-all for a position you know you need, but you're not exactly sure which one. So you take Skoronski and say, yeah, I'm good with that. Now, I will cry a tear for JSN, the JSN Justin Fields reunion that we're hereby, pretty much ending. But I'm not going to be sad about selecting a really good football player in Peter Skoronski.
All right.
Let's
Locking it in. Peter Skoronski. Is that what we're doing? All right.
Yep.
Skoronski, number 9 overall, the Chicago Bears. Connor, that puts us up with the Philadelphia Eagles at number 10. Curious where your eyes go to first with the board the way that it is.
Right. They're so interesting because the roster's loaded. They brought back their corners somehow. It felt like this pick was so easy for so long because you're like, all right, they're going to – we kind of thought they'd lose Bradbury, and they didn't. Then we're like, oh, they're losing Slay. And then they didn't. And he even said it. He was like, it's been good. And then it's like, wait, I'm not leaving. It's like, oh, okay. So
we did the Wolf of Wall Street gift.
And we've gone over, Trevor, that they paid Avonte Maddox. Like, even if you want to kind of give the FU and we'll still take a corner we like and we'll just play them all on the field and figure it out. Like, they're not even really built for that right now. No. So for me, my mind really goes 2 places. We know that they're always looking for great athletes for the defensive line. And that's where I look at Kalijah Kancey. And then, because this is what we would do. Then I'm also looking at, here's all the weapons we have on offense. Try to stop us. And take Jackson Smith and Jigba. Honestly.
There it is.
So I think I lean with the latter in this scenario. I have no problem taking Jackson Smith and Jigba in this spot. Trotting out A.J. Brown, him, Devontae Smith. Obviously, you have talent at tight end with Dallas Goedert. They're going to make anything work at running back. I'm not taking Bijan here, and I love Bijan. Bijan's a no-brainer top 10 player in the draft, but this would just be a little early for me. This is just kind of one of the more fun picks we're able to do. I would lean JSN.
Brett made a face. I want to hear what the face is for with JSN.
I mean, even if, all of their age and turnover on defense, even if their defense takes a step back, if they're scoring 37 a game, who cares?
Exactly.
No,
it's insane.
I hear you. A couple of things. It'd be funny if the Eagles did still have a major secondary need, like let's say one of Slay or Bradbury was gone. We'd probably be picking Joey Porter Jr. in this spot, right at number 10. And that would be 3 corners in the top 10, which I don't think we've gone through an exercise where that has happened before, but all of the spots certainly made sense. So I just thought that was interesting. I also looked at JSN. Yeah. I think I'm leaning that direction because it's just hilariously awesome to imagine that.
Awesome.
The only other one that I would say is Paris Johnson Jr. is still there. And as of right now, they don't have a major offensive line need, but the Eagles got to where they were because they consistently, I don't want to say to a fault because it's never really to a fault, but like they over prioritize the trenches on offense and defense. Lane Johnson is still there. Jason Kelce is still there, but Sumelo is gone. So I think Jurgens is maybe going to slide into one of those spots, but I
don't love him at guard. And I like him a lot
to be a Kelce replacement. And so you know that if next offseason comes around and both Kelce and Lane Johnson retire, which is very much in the cards, if you already had Paris Johnson Jr. on your team, then all of a sudden you don't even blink. Like you don't even blink. It doesn't matter if you don't have an early first round pick again. Like it's just you're getting these guys in. So I would say one of the Ohio State guys, Paris Johnson Jr. or Jackson Smith and Jigba. But honestly, dude, I'm great with either and would all be all for the hilarious score 37 points a game if we went with JSN.
I think we have fun with it and go with JSN, but I love your outline of Paris, especially he played guard 2 years ago. So it's not even outrageous to ask him to hold the fort at guard for a year at the pros. I like him as a tackle better, obviously, but it's an interesting outline and something that we should start forward thinking on for actual mock drafts where we're looking at what the team could do.
And not just he played in, not just with Paris Johnson specifically, it's not just that he played guard, he played right guard. And then he flipped over to left tackle. So I was thinking about that actually when those guys were talking about Peter Skoronski, who I love the Skoronski pick. I think he's a phenomenal football player. But like, I think Paris Johnson Jr. also brings that versatility because you've already seen him do the reverse side footwork because he started at right guard and then obviously flipped over at left tackle. Yeah. So I think that just goes into it too. But we'll take Jackson Smith and Jigba here at number 10, which will put you guys back on the clock at number 11 for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I have fun. It is fun. And I have to say, that's actually the first pick as we're going down that I'm really glad we didn't have, that I was like, ooh, I want to see what they do. Because like Connor said, it was so easy for a while. And sometimes when you're doing all of these and picking for every team, you want a couple easy ones, right? It's like, oh, look, Philly lost both corners. There's a bunch of good corners. They get a corner. And then it was like, well, they got one corner. They could still take a corner for the same reasons you talked about them taking tackle. Like they're going to lose corners. Eventually they're getting old. They want to have guys in the pipeline. And then they got the other cornerback. And I was like, well, hell, Howie, what are you going to do now? So luckily we didn't have to be Howie. You guys did that for us. And oh boy, that offense is face melting.
Silly.
Yeah. That's
winning window, baby. Winning
well,
window.
The good thing is that because of them having fun at 10, we get to be practical and responsible at 11. Paris Johnson Jr. staring us down in the face at 11. I feel like it'd be malpractice to do literally anything else.
Yeah, unless they like a different tackle like Broderick Jones, but I think Paris Johnson does what Broderick Jones does and just does it better and brings a little bit more positional flexibility as well. So I don't know. This is just an odd day for Bootleg because we're peacemakers. We're responsible. Like, what the hell happened to us?
This isn't why people wanted you to have you guys on the show.
It's okay.
No,
the Jets are coming. The Jets are coming. Don't worry.
Yeah.
They're not drinking and they're doing regular things. Who are these people?
You're right. We should put Connor. We should have scheduled the pod for 10 p.m.
I know.
Not 11 a.m.
I'm sorry. Why does this matter during draft season?
I kept it off camera just in case.
There we go.
There it is.
It doesn't matter what time it is.
Yeah, I'm with Connor.
Connor's gonna have you send some, depending on what you guys do at 13 in a second. But all right, so we got.
Yeah. Do you want homemade wine or not? It's up to you. Choose wisely.
We got Paris Johnson Jr. going to the Titans at number 11. Connor, we're up with the Houston Texans. We gave him Bryce Young up at the top of the draft. So what are you thinking here? We still have Broderick Jones on the board for an offensive tackle pick, but I
like their line right now. Yeah.
Handful of other defensive linemen, defensive players overall that we could go with. But what are you thinking here?
A lot of things, which is kind of fun for Houston. You could talk me into, honestly, you could really talk me into still taking Joey Porter Jr. for the long term of the secondary. And then you have him and Stingley as your, kind of duo, your corner duo for a long time. You could talk me into Lucas Van Ness if you want size in their front four. You can talk me into taking Nolan Smith as kind of this chess piece, a guy that could do things off the ball, a guy that can obviously really blossom as an athletic rusher as well. So Trevor, my mind is kind of clear on just continuing to help out DeMeco Ryans' young defense.
Man, I'm with you. Nolan Smith would be fun. I don't think they have that kind of pass rusher that they could even point to. And I understand that Nolan Smith is not the pass rusher that his athleticism hints that he can be yet, but he just has such a passion for being the best football player he possibly can, that's the kind of guy that you definitely take a bet on.
Especially DeMeco Ryans.
Yeah, I look at the secondary too. I love Derek Stingley. And if you put Derek Stingley on one side, Joey Porter Jr. on the other, that's pretty sick. Steven Nelson's going to be 30 years old this year. He's in the final year of his contract.
Yep.
They don't have anybody in the tank after that.
Yeah, and you keep Nelson for depth, obviously. But if you really just fell in love with the idea of Porter starting, you could even move on from most of Nelson's money. They're not going to do that, but just highlighting the point of they should not hold you back from taking Porter.
The only other option that I really consider is Quentin Johnston, because there's nobody at wide receiver really.
It's a little early for me, but I get it because of need. Here's my thing, Trevor, that I'll try to sell you on. Do we think at 33 they could still get a wide receiver? Because I do.
Yes, 100%.
That's why I'm more comfortable trying to get what's left of the high end of the defensive class here.
See, this is why we're a great married couple when it comes to mock drafting.
We talk through our
We
problems.
balance each other's out. Good communication.
I will say as an aside, if you look at how D'Amico ran that defense in San Francisco, a lot of cover 2 in the second half, and their style of cover 2 was we're going to beat the hell out of you at the line of scrimmage and then get into our zones.
Yeah. Joey Porter Jr.
Arms down to the ground.
Come on
Just
now,
saying.
my friend.
Yep.
He fits.
Yep.
God, Joey Porter and Derek Stingley Jr. Whoa.
Yeah, now you have an identity, right?
Love it.
You have an identity.
This is the moment everybody's been waiting for. New York Jets on the clock at number 13. Fellas, take it away.
Okay.
We think New York says F you to the Packers.
Agreed.
At least F you to a first round pick. Like
Yes,
that seems
yes.
outrageous
we
to
agree.
me.
We agree.
They're going to take their leverage and run with it and say, we can take a player and we can still go get Aaron because Aaron doesn't want to go anywhere else. So we have to make this work, but we're not going to make it work on your terms. We're going to make it work on our terms. And then Armand went to tackle. And Brett, I'll let you take away the tackle discussion because the board's still pretty good for tackle.
Yeah, I'm looking around. So let's see, who do we still have left? We still have Broderick Jones. We still have. Yeah, it might be a little bit early for Wright for me, who I also see as more of a right tackle anyway.
Yep.
But like looking at the Jets depth chart on paper, their offensive line is actually very strong, but it comes down to whether or not you believe that the organization believes in Mekhi Becton.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's been 2 straight years now of the organization sending signals of they're not super happy with him. And when you also throw in the fact that he hasn't been super durable since he got drafted either, I feel like it might be prudent to get some insurance at the left tackle position. I am a big fan of Max Mitchell at right tackle, which if you watch Max Mitchell in college, like he would switch back and forth on left or right as like the ultimate swing tackle, even within the same drive, like against Texas in college. Yeah. He was playing left tackle and right tackle on the same possession.
I liked him too. I like
awesome.
Max Mitchell, man.
So I like just kind of keeping him at right tackle. If we were looking for a pure right tackle, I would probably advocate for, okay, let's test the waters for a trade, go down a little bit, get Darnell Wright.
Yep.
But since I think that left tackle is the more likely option here, just because the organization has never really seemed to be all in on Mekhi Becton, even though Mekhi was great coming out of college, I lean towards left tackle here. Everything else in the offensive line is totally fine. EJ, are you comfortable with Broderick Jones here?
I'm very comfortable with Broderick Jones here and think he would be a good pick. And as a very fun aside, if we're going to be the GMs for the day, Connor, I'm going to call you on draft day as Ryan Poles, and I'm going to try and confuse you. And I'm going to say, hey, Tevin Jenkins from Mekhi Becton, go.
Wow. Fascinating.
That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one.
It's fascinating. So for me, it would be an interesting conversation. I wonder, they haven't had Becton really for 2 years now at this point. You waited so long, and he looks to be in really good shape, but that's, once again,
best shape of his life.
Yeah, it's that season. Exactly.
Me too. I am too.
I know for a fact this regime was not in on Tevin at all in that draft. That's all I could say to it. But for me, it is an interesting conversation. It is an interesting conversation. And maybe, hey, like Brett kind of highlighted, maybe they're not very in on Mekhi Becton right now. So your tone can change pretty quickly. That's a really good, it's not working here swap.
Yep.
What do you have idea?
Yeah, and Becton doesn't necessarily have to start if he goes to Chicago. Same with Tev if he goes to the Jets. You can have, like, imagine Mekhi Becton is your swing tackle. Like, come on.
It probably helps him with the conditioning issues that he's had.
I love that. Like, Braxton Jones gets an ankle injury in week 6, and all right, we'll roll Mekhi Becton out for a couple of games. Okay.
Your 6th O-line on the goal line.
Yeah.
I feel great about that. So anyways, that's just a fun aside that you start thinking about these things as like, because a lot of that stuff happens, side conversations, and maybe we come back to it after the draft and we switch before camp or whatever else. But during the draft, especially, players move that you don't necessarily think, and it is because of regime change, whether somebody was in or out during a draft, somebody you really wanted. I mean, for me as a Chicago fan, I was a huge DJ Moore guy coming out in the draft. And I was, hey, you don't get all the players you love. he comes back to the Bears, and I'm like, okay. And people are like, what do you think of DJ Moore? And I'm like pushing all my pre-draft stuff. Like, he was amazing, and he's been an even better pro. So I couldn't love it more. Those are the things that keep me up at night.
So well, let me ask you this, Connor, because
go ahead.
I don't want to get you in trouble here, but do you think the organization is in on Mekhi?
I think Joe Douglas is. He's a stickler to picks he made, whether that's right or wrong. I mean, they haven't. Think of the guys they haven't dumped that have just been so bad. Mims has struggled there. They've tried it with Mims year after year. Ashton Davis has struggled. They've held on to him. Even Braden Mann's been their punter for years. He's awful. Like, he's terrible. It's weird. Like, Douglas is obviously much better than what the Jets have had at GM, but he holds on hope with his picks, and I think he's still the guy holding on hope for Becton.
Okay. Taking that into account, I still think, because let's say Becton has an amazing year, right? He's going into the last year of his contract.
Yeah, he's free agent
deal right now. Do we feel comfortable giving him $22 million a year next offseason? I still kind of might go tackle anyway, just to give us the flexibility.
You guys hit this pick out of the park. This would be, I'd sprint this one into Broderick Jones. Yeah. It's not even, okay. There's so many reasons. Your Becton point, absolutely. Dwayne Brown's going to be 38, and it's great to have him on the left side, but he's 38. He's on an expiring deal. I mean, Becton's health, Max Mitchell's health. Max Mitchell played well in a year that he should not have had to play a lot, but then he had the blood clot issue. Yeah. This is like, you guys are all over it. For me, it would have to be Broderick Jones here, or the scenario that you mentioned, Brett. If you had a team want to come up to this pick, you could also consider a guy like Darnell Wright or DeJuan Jones later in this round.
Yeah. I won't tease it just because I'm worried that tackles might fly off the board quicker than we want them to. Yeah. So EJ, if you're comfortable with Broderick, let's just lock that in here.
I think we do that for multiple reasons. And, Connor's stamp is the ultimate seal of approval for a Jets move at this point. I'm like, cool. He likes it. We like it. Lock it in.
Yeah. Broderick's a good one. We've had Broderick go to the Jets for honestly most of our mock drafts at this point, because it feels like
Yeah, he ends up there a lot.
He's the guy that makes the most sense for them there. Although I will say, if Mekhi Becton truly is in the best shape of his life, and he's durable, and he's out there, and he's the guy that we thought that he was going to be when he was coming out of the draft, and they drafted Darnell Wright at right tackle, that would just be like the Bash Brothers from Mighty Ducks, like just in the penalty box all the time, because they're more focused on being physical than they are actually playing the game, which would be, I don't know, just beautiful.
The Hound in the Mountain. Yeah,
basically. But just like, on the same team.
Amazing.
All right. We got the Patriots up at number 14. Patriots are an extremely interesting team. It's always very difficult to try to go in the mind of general manager Bill Belichick and wonder what they're going to do here, because, Connor, I would tell you that one of the biggest needs that they have on their roster is a difference-making wide receiver. Zay Jones is on the board. Quentin Johnson's on the board.
Yep.
They're not going to take a wide receiver at 14, I don't think, especially for spending money and getting a different one in Juju Smith-Schuster, and then even the shorter deal with Mike Gesicki in free agency. But I'm curious, what do you think about the Patriots spot here? Is there any player that's still on the board that's really jumping out to you?
It's really tough, man. It's really tough. Like, this would have been a home for any of the top 3 offensive linemen. Of course, they need offensive line help. It's a little early for me to go down the Darnell Wright road in this spot, although you could probably talk me into it. My next ranked wide receiver after JSN Trevor is still Jordan Addison, despite the very, very slender weight at the combine. Mm-hmm. And I think they need wide receiver help. They could probably still use another pass rusher as well. You could talk me into Lucas Van Ness in this spot. So, and you could always talk me into Deonte Banks pretty early as well. So this has kind of become wide open, because the obvious need at tackle did not really play into their hands in this spot at 14.
I think Brian Branch would be a great Patriot as well. I like Brian Branch a lot.
He already mostly knows the defense. Belichick and
Saban it's the same thing.
Half the same stuff, yeah.
What about Nolan Smith?
It goes back to the pass rush conversation. Nolan Smith I overlooked him there. Absolutely.
If you're talking about pass rush, it's hard not to see Van Ness as a Patriot after you imagine it.
It's very true.
Like once you think about that, you go him or Smith. No, not him or anybody. Like him. If you're thinking defensive line, and sometimes we see that tackle run start, the offensive tackle run start, and then people get nervy. We see this every year, right? Oh, that guy's not going to go till the late 20s, and 3 are gone by 15, and it's like, oh, get in line. You're not gonna get him at 25. So that happens as well. I don't necessarily see New England at that place, but again, they're a little bit, like you said, general manager Belichick is a little bit like John Snyder. He'll go on his own board and do what he wants, and if he sees value, he'll do it. But boy, that Van Ness thing, if you think that defensive line is where they're going to go, that's a hard thing to unsee.
Yeah, no, I think Van Ness is on the board for me. Anton Harrison's on the board for me. Darnell Wright's on the board for me. Connor, any of those three really stick out to you?
By rankings, I would go with Van Ness. Him, Judon, and Uche is, you can get after the quarterback quite a bit. You obviously have the power profile of Van Ness. So, yeah, that's where I roll here.
All right, let's do it. Lucas Van Ness, Patriots at number 14. Y'all are up with the Packers at number 15.
Pass.
Okay, all right.
No. Okay. I will take this one so that EJ doesn't have to make the Packers better. I will say
he's gonna sabotage the Packers. He's gonna pick like player number 285 on the PFF big board.
I'm looking at Jose Ramirez right now, and I'm feeling pretty. No, I will say, Jose Ramirez, by the way, great player, but he's not going to go this high.
Nothing against Jose. We get to talk to him. Go this high. Great player.
So my thing is like, Aaron's gone. That ship sailed.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Love. Let's just make Jordan Love's time as easy as possible here in his first year as a starter. Receiver, I actually like the moves they did. I was screaming at them to take a receiver in the first round. I didn't think that they were going to get lucky in the second round. Obviously, they did. They got Christian Watson, who just fell somehow that far. I was dumbfounded that happened. And then they got Romeo Doubs, who I also really like too. So like they got some young receivers I really like. Right now, their TE1 is Josiah DeGuara, technically, who's more of like an H-back, and they kind of got nothing else. So for me, I know this might seem early for some people, but EG and I are kind of in lockstep on Dalton Kincaid being an absolute revelation of a receiver at tight end. And I think that taking him right now will help Jordan Love hit the ground running as fast as humanly possible.
And it actually fits with a very typical pattern for the Packers of taking players that I love. And I love Dalton Kincaid. And you've got a young quarterback. You don't sabotage that guy in the same way that you did with Aaron Rodgers for years, because it was an assumption. We can grab literally anything and Aaron will make them all look better. I think everyone in Green Bay knows that's not going to be the case anymore, and that they need to give Love as much of a cushion going into his first year as a starter. There's a lot of pressure there for everybody in the organization as well for him to succeed. And what do you give a young quarterback? I realize he's been in the league a couple of years, but in terms of a young starting quarterback, you give him a safety blanket. And Dalton Kincaid as a receiver is an incredible start.
All right, there we go. Dalton Kincaid as tight end 1 off the board to the Green Bay Packers at number 15. We've often had tight end going to the Packers. Sometimes it'll be Dalton Kincaid. Sometimes it'll be Darnell Washington. But we often look in that same direction for the Packers when they're sitting here at number 15 overall. Connor, we're up with the Washington Commanders at 16. I will remind you.
I saw
that Will Levis is on the board. I will remind you.
Yeah, it's interesting. They are going to give Howell everything, every shot. Jacoby could play the position. Mm-hmm. So, man, it's nice that Levis fell to this spot. Full transparency, I like taking Deonte Banks a lot better.
Oh, okay.
But this isn't a horrible spot for Levis. Let me be fair to him. He still has traits. He still would go to a place that he does not have to play. He's not thrown into the fire. Even if Howell fails in camp, Jacoby could play. So you can talk me into Levis coming off the board here. I don't think it's egregious. We had fun with it in the top 10. I don't think this is egregious.
No, and I think honestly, we know that quarterbacks are going to have a premium anyways. So even if people are out there and they're like, man, I had late second round grade or like an early third round grade on Will Levis. Like that's just that's not the reality that we live in. He wouldn't last till that long. It's not in a vacuum when it comes to the grades. You know that these guys are going to go higher because if you hit on them, it makes all the difference in the world. It changed your entire franchise. So I'm obviously pointed out Will Levis because I thought about him here at 16. I don't think he's 100% of a lock, though. I'd love Deonte Banks. They have a major cornerback need for sure. In my opinion, I liked Sam Howell enough to where, one, I thought that him being a 5th round pick was crazy. I'm curious as to what you guys thought of Sam Howell lasting all the way till the 5th round last year. But the fact that he didn't really get a chance to show his stuff last year, unless you love Will Levis, I think you're just still comfortable with Sam Howell as your roll of the dice young quarterback, knowing that you also have Jacoby Brissett on the roster. But before we end up making this pick, I'm curious on what you guys thought about Sam Howell being a 5th round pick last year, and if you guys have any faith in him kind of going forward, potentially being their starter.
You want to lead, Brett, or you want me to?
I mean, EJ was an even more passionate Howell supporter than I was last year, but he did so because he made the excellent point of what year were you watching?
Of course. Right.
Yeah. that made all the difference of the world. And I completely agreed with him. That's like, okay, if we're looking at junior year, or was it sophomore year versus junior?
Sophomore year versus junior year.
Just
sophomore
go with
year.
Second to last in the world of NIL and the transfer portal.
Yeah.
The 6th or 7th year.
The COVID year. Yeah.
And he was a different guy, right?
Yeah.
And then, you only got to see him for one game in the pros, and I mean, you kind of started to see sophomore Sam Howell a little bit in that one start. And for me, like, I wasn't a huge Sam Howell guy, but I also didn't think he was going to be a 5th rounder either.
Same. Yeah.
Right there with you. Yeah.
I thought he would have gone around where Malik ended up going, which is like 3rd round, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't think that there was only going to be one quarterback taken in like the first 100 picks or whatever it was. So
crazy.
Everything got really, really suppressed last year. And I think Howell was just kind of a victim of quarterbacks not going. And I think if quarterbacks went faster last year, he would have gone way higher in the 5th. And at some point, the Commanders were like, guys, we got, I mean, come on. He's staring us in the face. We got to do it. But, EJ was a Sam Howell champion based on the fact that different years showed you very different prospects.
And he's a lot of tools, and you saw him play high-level football. And even in the year that was his down year, when all his weapons left, he became the best running threat in college football as a quarterback through the first 8 weeks. He was incredible as a running quarterback, which is a lot of the same discussion we're having about CJ Stroud this year. Because, I wish he'd run more. I wish he'd run more. Gets to the Georgia game, unleashes his legs, and everybody goes, whoa, whoa. And Howell did that for like an entire season because he didn't have anybody really besides Josh Downs to throw to. So I like him, but I really think the conversation echoes the exact same thing that's being bandied about in Atlanta this year with Desmond Ridder, right? You've got a sort of, I will say, 2nd tier quarterback or edge of top tier quarterback who has some tools, who has a lot of experience, started a lot of games, as a young quarterback, would have liked to see both of those guys play a little bit earlier, so we had more data coming into this year. But I am fully on board with the Commanders leaving the reins in Howell's hands for now and seeing what they have. Jacoby makes it a whole lot easier to do that, and then you just go with it. So in terms of appetite for Levis right here, I want to ask all of you, if he passes this spot, where's he go in the first round? If not,
he's a Buccaneer, baby.
If not Tampa, right? Because
I think
I think Connor's point is valid that that's been a match made for a while now and will be, I think, a good fit. But if that didn't happen for whatever reason, we're only at 16. We're only halfway through the first round. And if he doesn't go here, and the Bucs didn't have a glaring need, does he go anywhere, or does anybody trade back up for him? And I think it's a fascinating conversation because I think the public perception of Will Levis is he's off the board by now. Of course, look at him.
Right.
And the reality, just the way this draft has worked out, which is, I would say, semi-realistic. We have 4 viewpoints here. Does he go? And I'm not so sure. Brett brings up the excellent point of last year. We all said, oh, no, one quarterback in the top 100? No. And we're not going to see that this year, but Levis is a fascinating case. If he doesn't go right here, does he go?
I'm not going to pick him.
We're just letting him slide. Letting him slide.
Trevor, I think we
Banks.
sign off on Deontay Banks here. I feel really good about the player and the need.
Yep. Deontay Banks, we've talked about it many times on this podcast. It's somebody that you and I like a lot. The press man ability of Deontay Banks is some of the best in this class. He just does not have the stats in the takeaway column for people to really be able to champion him in that regard. And so, yeah, I think that maybe the ball skills, he might be lacking a little bit, but at worst, I think he's a fantastic lockdown CB2 for you. And if you've got Deontay Banks as your CB2, I think you got one hell of a CB1, and then you've probably got a great, fantastic outside cornerback duo anyway. So I'll go with Deontay Banks here. Certainly corner's a major need. And then you guys are on the clock now with the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 17.
I love the local link there, Maryland to DC. That would be super fun for Deontay and a lot of his fans.
Not a lot in movers, costs, like if the franchise is trying to pinch pennies and you got to pay the guy to relocate, you don't have,
which
they are right there.
Well, I mean, hey, if they need movers that'll get you there overnight, they could just call Baltimore and ask who they use.
Jeez, there it is. There it is.
Good Lord.
Opening up some old wounds, TJ.
Yeah, they never go away. All right, Steelers.
What do y'all think?
I'm between tackle and Brian Branch. I could kind of go either way here.
Yeah, strangely enough, we had secondary as a need for the Steelers. Deontay Banks was certainly, this is probably the first pick in this round where it's like, oh, he's off the board one before. We were still thinking that guy was there. Joey Porter Jr. would have been super fun. The link with the Steelers, but he goes at 12 to the Texans. I love Brian Branch. Brian Branch or whom? Who was your second?
Darnell Wright probably be the other one that I look at pretty strongly here.
Yeah, I think Wright or Anton Harrison both are ass kickers in the same mold that would fill the same spot for the Steelers. I would lean with one of those two because, again, the first tier for us was defensive back. I would take Brian Branch here, but I'm one of his larger supporters in this draft, I think. And really, it was Porter or Banks. They're gone. So we slide down as teams have to do. Next rank on the board, go to tackle. And I think actually both of those guys fit with the identity of the Steelers really well.
So when I think about doing a first round pick in a mock, I'm also thinking about, okay, well, if I pass on this position, who could I get on the second round? There's a decent chance, not a great chance, but a decent chance that instead of taking a high-end nickel like Brian Branch right now, we could get a tackle and then come back and get like Jartavius Martin, who I'm obsessed with in the second round.
Yeah.
And I'd rather package Darnell Wright with Jartavius Martin than taking Brian Branch now and getting completely sold out at tackle in the second round. So lock in Darnell Wright.
All right. There we go.
Works for me.
That's been one of our faves on the mock drafts we do. That's just a really good pairing, Darnell Wright in Pittsburgh. Trevor, we're on the clock at 18 for the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
We could once again talk about Will Levis if we want. We could also just kind of floor it in terms of talent. Jalen Carter went to them at 6. They are back on the clock again. Once again, you can go down the road of a Nolan Smith if you want. I mean, there's a lot of different options here for a Detroit team that is really starting to blossom with talent.
I got 2 players.
Okay.
I had 2 players that come to mind. One of them is Darnell Wright. Or not Darnell Wright. You guys just took Darnell Wright. One of them is Darnell Washington.
That's fun.
I understand they just traded away Hawkinson. People are going to look at the situation and be like, they don't prioritize tight ends. Why would they draft another one in the first round just when they just traded one? Darnell Washington's different, I think. He, of course, is less of a utilized wide receiver, big wide receiver, if you will, than a lot of these other tight ends are. But his blocking ability feels exactly like what Dan Campbell is trying to build on this team. He's that extra 6 offensive lineman that gets to stand attached, and he also get to have him go up the field and run some routes. And when he does, he can look like an absolute alien the way that he moves at his size. So, I mean, that would put 2 crazy alien players on both sides of the line of scrimmage in Penei Sewell and Darnell Washington. So I'm thinking about Washington. The other one that I thought about is Quentin Johnston, because when you look at this wide receiver room, and you throw Quentin Johnston in with Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, like all of a sudden, like that's pretty damn good, right? That's a lot of along the lines of, and not to this extent, but like what we did with the Eagles at 10, where you just go, let's just outscore teams, right?
Yeah.
What's the meaning of the game? Score more points than the opponent, and I just think that gives you a better chance to do that. So that's where my mind went, Connor. I don't know if there was another player that was really you were gravitating towards, or your thoughts on them.
I like the Washington idea a lot. It's just, even if you think Detroit doesn't care about the tight end position, they definitely care about winning in the trenches and winning up front and being the toughest, baddest team on the field. And that's what Washington fits with their identity. This is also a team that has put a decent amount of resources into the running back position. They still care about running the football, even though they have all these Ferraris at wide receiver and an offense that is extremely well dialed up. So I would lean Darnell Washington by personal preference here.
Let's do it. I'm great with it. We'll lock it in. We'll lock it in there. Y'all are up with the Bucks at number 19. If you had any Darnell Washington thoughts, you could also fire those off before you got into it. But with him being a top 20 pick and all. But other than that, you're up with Tampa at 19.
We had some plans for him later in the first. I'm a little bit upset by this, not going to lie.
Yeah, we're starting to get to that. You took my cookie part of the draft.
Look, it's a what we would do mock.
We left you Will Levis, though.
We're not leaving the good players to the end of the throw.
Well, you had me worried. Bad. You had me worried with the Detroit talk at the end there. I thought you were just going to tip into Bijan, and I was like, don't make me do that. No, Washington I like. He does bring, and the Detroit fans are going to moan. They are. They're lucky they got the top of the pick at the top of the round to be happy about. They're going to say, look, rookie tight ends don't produce, and they're correct, but that's not why you're drafting Washington. Yep. It is a different thing, and he's sort of dual threat, and he fits with their coaching profile. Let's be honest. Dan Campbell is former tight end himself. So I don't mind the pick. I think you'll probably hear lots of moaning from Detroit fans because look, Detroit fans are really good at moaning. They practice a lot.
And I will say, okay, that's all right. That's coming from an in-division rival, just so everybody knows, so we can absolve ourselves of a little bit of blame there. But Detroit fans, we do love them because they're very passionate and they're very in the comments. And I see a ton of people talking about Detroit Lions mock drafts. And so that is definitely one where Lions fans, let us know what you thought of this haul. I don't know if we've had the Lions have this one before, where you get Jalen Carter at 6, you get Darnell Washington at 18. Very, very curious. But anyways, moving on. Back to you guys.
Yeah, and if they follow Bootleg, they know we love the Lions a lot. We love what they've done for the past 2 drafts.
A lot, yeah.
They have transformed that organization. So this is not anti-Lions slander at all. Bucks, I don't know. This is the conversation we just had. Levis is there. They need a quarterback in the future, but this is a what we'd do mock. So that changes. So
I will say 10 minutes down the road from me, I was at USC's Pro Day in a much rainier day earlier this week. And I was on the bleachers and Caleb came out. He was sitting about 4 feet away from me, watching all of his guys do the drills, talked to a couple of his teammates, watched literally every scout from every team. All 32 teams were there. Curious. All 32 teams were at the USC Pro Day in the rain. And I could literally see from the bleachers, just all of them, just every 5 minutes or so, just check out next year's model that's coming out. And it was a stark reminder that he is that guy. And he is so, as much as everybody in draft media loves Caleb Williams, believe me, we got nothing on what the actual teams think of Caleb Williams. They would trade anything and everything to get him. And I think the Bucks are one of those teams where it's like, doesn't even matter what their record is in 2023. They would give up heaven and earth to go up and get either him or Drake May, to be perfectly honest. So I don't really care about Will Levis to the Bucks because I know what's coming out next year. And I don't even want to waste time. I don't even want to waste assets on it. I don't think Will Levis is going to suddenly make the Bucks a good team this year. Like, they're probably going to be within striking distance in the 2024 draft anyway. So I literally don't care. I would rather take an asset this year that will make either Caleb or Drake May's life easier in 2024, which to me screams tackle. And I know, EJ, you're a big Anton Harrison guy. Can I talk you into that?
You can always talk me into Anton Harrison. I like him as a player a lot, especially in the right fit for a team that wants to really leverage his skills. My counterpoint would be, or the small debate we're going to have as co-GMs here, is in terms of defensive line go-getters, there's a couple guys out here in terms of pass rush. We've got a Kalijah Cansey. Don't know how you feel about that. Brian Brzee is there as well. We've still got Nolan Smith on the board. We've got a bunch of ways to go get after the passer, the opposing passer. And that's the balance. We're talking about Harrison being fifth tackle off the board, if my math is right.
I think fifth.
So fifth best tackle, or one of those guys that can add to what is a good defensive line. They obviously don't have as many holes in the defensive line as they do in a room like quarterback. Would you be tempted by any of those guys' particular skill sets, or would you kind of go down the fairway at about 225 yards and say, we'll take Anton Harrison because he's a good, solid pick and a good, solid player, which he is?
I'm a huge fan of so many of the day two pass rushers that, like, I know we could still get one. There's like 40 edge players in this class.
Okay, last flare across the bow, Felix, just wild card.
Oh, you're taking advantage of my love right now, man.
I am. I started that love, and I can take advantage of it as I'd like.
I do love Felix.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about long-term franchise health. And
you are protecting next year's quarterback. Let's just be honest.
And this year's too. Like, whoever's playing this year, like, they're going to get absolutely crushed if they don't have tackle help anyway, right? So I kind of feel like, regardless, Anton Harrison's
all right. There we go. We'll just do it, and we will take the wild wails of Bucs fans, starting with you, Trevor. How terrible do you feel about this Anton Harrison pick?
He loves him.
Oh, okay.
I love this pick. Anton Harrison's been.
He loves it because it's not Will Levis.
Anton Harrison's been one of my guys for so long. I mean, even when he was coming into this year, he's so fantastic at his pass sets. He's so experienced as a pass blocker. I wish he was a little bit stronger, but I think the consistencies in his strength are really what's more the issue, not necessarily that he doesn't have the strength to his game. So he's already coming off 3 straight years of being a starter for the Sooners. You could be able to you could play him right away. He's not an inexperienced guy. It would allow Tristan Wirfs to stay at right tackle, which I would prefer anyways. People are like, oh, just flip him over to left. It's like, guys, where do you think defenses deploy their best pass rushers nowadays? Like, they do it on the right side. Like, a lot of times they just go after the weaknesses. It doesn't matter. So love the Anton Harrison selection. And as I've often said, Brett Kollmann's the songbird of our generation for what he was saying about Caleb Williams or Drake May potentially becoming Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year. So absolutely love that as well.
Can we just drop the mics and leave now, Brett? I mean, literally, we nailed
we made the
Jets
guy happy. We made the Bucs guy happy.
You did. You really did.
Did your job.
Come on, we're done. Like, we can just leave this to the pro personnel guy, right? We'll take off. That's awesome.
All right, Connor, we're up at number 20. We'll speed it up here, obviously, for these last 10 picks that we got here. Seattle, we often have them going with Jackson Smith-Njigba, but Jackson Smith-Njigba not on the board, went off the board a lot sooner than this. But what do you think about Seattle? Anything really standing out to you?
I would go back to that third wide receiver. Well, we just saw what happened to this offense when Tyler Lockett got hurt. It certainly would help to have that third wide receiver that you're kind of grooming for a bigger role in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think interior offensive line, they'll be able to address at pick 37. Right? Like, I don't know. I like the center class a lot. I don't think I need to take one at 20. I think I can get somebody at 37. So Seattle, and I would have really liked even another corner for them, but we had in this draft, the corners were premium value. The top 4 went in the top 16 picks. And honestly, I think that's how the draft's going to go personally. I think we're pretty close to that at least. So for me here, Trevor, I'm kind of locked in on who the next wide receiver is. I know you like Quentin Johnston a lot. And then a matter if there's a off the board kind of pick here I didn't think of.
I wonder if I'd go Addison here because I like Addison a lot.
He's my next ranked wide receiver, and he kind of slots into that offense really easily with his skill set.
Full pun intended. Like he's their slot guy, right? And then he's the takeover player for if Tyler Lockett really starts to go downhill. with getting a little bit older and obviously the contract situation with him over the next couple of years too, you get a little bit more flexibility if you have a player who's in similar skill set like Jordan Addison, and you pair those two guys. I mean, those are two fantastic route runners that are going to put a lot of stress on a secondary to be great in communication, to be great in their coverages and their technique, everything, because those guys will burn you. And of course, DK Metcalf's just an absolute alien of an X factor. So I'd be down with Addison.
Let's go with Addison.
He's the weight. I get it. There's just not a lot of football players who survive who are that small at wide receiver, but he's just really damn good, man. So I'm gonna go. I'll agree. We can lock in Addison at number 20.
All right.
Y'all are up with the Chargers.
Well, I'm Jack, DJ. You know who I want.
I do. I was waiting for that discussion about wide receiver to the Hawks, and he was like, "Don't say Zay. Don't say Zay."
Like, if you say Zay plays right now, I'm walking off the show.
I was like, "Don't say Zay. He wants him so bad." And we're both friends with Alex Caston, who writes for the Chargers Wire, and hung out with a bunch of the Chargers Wire guys at Shrine Bowl. So we've got a little bit more insight. You're obviously working for the Chargers.
Now, so.
That's a newer development. We've got a pretty good idea of what needs are. And again, top of our list was best right tackle available, but we're now into the 5th offensive tackle or much higher ranked players from other positions. And it really does. Our second ranked position is wide receiver. And it comes down to, do you want, and we had them all there. We had, because we didn't know who was going to be gone. We had Zay, we had Addison, and we have Jalen Hyatt as the sort of wide out. I just want to see Justin Herbert whipping it to Jalen Hyatt because that would be fun. But it's hard for me here to not say Zay because he's the best out of the remaining players in terms of the way we had them ordered. After that, it was going to be a defensive back, Brian Branch or Chavius Martin. Deonte Banks is already gone. So I think this is an easy up and down, take the card in for Zay and, give Justin in that offense another weapon.
All right.
In the real draft, I'd be surprised if they did anything else either, to be honest.
I've had this before, and I do love a lot of people when they talk about speed with the Chargers, they just focus on like deep speed. Like they just say like, oh, they just need, like people force Jalen Hyatt here all the time, right? Because he's just the vertical deep speed. But I think they need just electric speed no matter what. And I think that Zay gives you even a lot more than just vertical speed. He gives you the horizontal speed. He gives you the ability to play all the different spots. So I agree. I love it. What do you think, Connor? What do you think about that pick? And then we're up with the Ravens at 22.
I like the pick. There's been times where I've enjoyed taking wide receiver for the Chargers, and I've gotten very mixed feedback from their fan base. Some love it, some don't. But I think Zay in that offense is, like you said, Trevor, too. Like, look at the player and the type of speed he brings to the offense. It would be a lot of fun to watch. I was laughing at pick 22 because you and I are the kings of playing ourselves. We are operating in this mock draft that Lamar Jackson is getting traded to the Colts.
Oh, shit.
And we are picking for the Ravens at 22.
Will Levis, you are a Baltimore
Raven.
Oh, no.
I think he is.
I don't disagree, and I didn't see this particular train coming either, but I'm very much enjoying watching it go
Ravens
down the
fans
tracks.
are never going to watch this show again.
Never again.
The screenshot of the check out this new mock with NFLSC. And people are just going to be like, I'm blocking this podcast.
I'm out.
We're reported. We're reported.
Yeah, blocked and reported.
So if we didn't take a quarterback and Snoop Huntley just gets the green light for the year. I love Snoop.
Yeah, we're big fans. Dude, Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley. What are you guys talking about?
People forget this. People do forget this. So
okay, if it wasn't going to be him.
This team is in on corners, but we get to this road with the Ravens every mock draft we do. None of the top 4 ever here. And then we go, do we take Cam Smith? Is there another corner we take?
Right.
There's more talented players on the board. We know they have a Jabo coming back next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still intrigued by Nolan Smith here.
I am too, but if they have OA and they have Tyus Bowser and they have Ojabo,
right?
I mean, like Nolan Smith, again, the cliche feels like a Raven, but
he's in the AFC North at some point.
Yeah. But dude, I honestly look at Quentin Johnston.
Okay. Yes.
This wide receiver room. They has Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews, but like if you throw Quentin Johnston in here, I think that at least rounds it out enough.
Yep. I can sign off on that one for sure.
And again, like obviously Will Levis is here.
He's not going in the mock draft. I think we could stop doing it at this point.
I think he is.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
I
know what Trevor's looking
Will
at.
Levis,
I
you
have a-
are
I have a
Buffalo
team.
Bill.
No, I have a cheese.
We don't know why. We have no idea why.
No, okay. We're gonna pick Quentin Johnson here for the Ravens.
For sure.
We're all in on Pro Bowl quarterback Snoop Huntley. And all I will say is that moving forward, if you guys control a team in which you would potentially like to trade back into the second round and get some extra draft capital, I have a team that could be moving up for one Will Levis if he were to be this far.
There it is. There it is.
There we go.
Quentin Johnson.
I will say at pick 23, there is a fascinating discussion because technically, Kirk is on his last year.
Yeah.
There is 4 void years on the back of the deal.
Jeez.
So there's a $28.5 million dead cap hit in 2024 because of 4 void years that they did for some reason. I could see Will Levis to the Minnesota Vikings as Kirk Cousins' developmental backup, and then they just eat it in 2024 and finally get out from under that deal.
Yeah.
And then I could see it. EJ, does that make you gag? Like what?
You're like, please dissuade me from this notion. I don't think that's a crazy thing, especially considering their head coach, right? I think any quarterback coach, any offensive coordinator, any head coach with an offensive background is going to look at a guy like Levis and what do they all say? We can fix him, right? He's got all those tools.
Especially if there's no pressure to start right away.
No pressure.
None.
We've got all that. Like, you think Kevin O'Connell doesn't look at a guy like Will Levis and go, huh, interesting. Like, I could do some things with him. I've done things with a lot less in the past. I don't think it's crazy, and they need a succession plan. The money is ridiculous. It's been ridiculous since they signed him for what Cousins brings them, but he's not going to play forever. He'll tell you he will, but he's not going to play forever. And if you could groom Levis for 2 years, I think it's the ideal situation for Levis, right? You get a couple of years or a year and a half. I'm going to rush you right on the field. We're into the 20s. Come on, guys. Quarterbacks in the 20s, like, people don't care. Not near as much. You take a quarterback in the top 10, certainly they care. Top 15, they're still like, well, they took him in the top 15. They got to play him. You take him down at 23 and you have a guy like Kirk Cousins in front of him and an offensively minded coach, you can hide him for a year or two. You can sit him down there and say, hey, and if he turns out to be really good, again, Trevor, you said it earlier, changes your franchise.
Yeah.
How about this, guys? Just the fact, too, that if anyone's going to have the full scoop on Levis, it should be Kevin O'Connell, right? Because Kevin O'Connell was the Rams offensive coordinator in 2020 when
with Liam.
Liam Cohen.
Yep.
So it's this. There's a lot of ties here that really start to add up.
Okay, there we go.
If he's going anywhere, it's here.
There it is.
There it
He's
is.
gone. Good for you,
And
Will Levis.
a good spot for him too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Genuinely, I think this is a good spot. I wonder what Vikings fans think about this one because who was it? Was it Jeremiah? Was it Kuiper who had
Jeremiah had Hendon Hooker going to them,
Hooker going to the
Mhm.
Vikings, and Viking fans are freaking out obviously because it's Hendon Hooker, but I'm very curious what they would think if Levis was the one who fell all the way to them. So Vikings fans, if you're watching this, let us know. Hit us up in the comment section. Let us know what you thought about this one. Jacksonville Jaguars at number 24. Connor, I think there's a no-brainer player that's still on the board.
Yeah, this is Brian Branch all day.
1,000%. He is an immediate starter for them.
Yep. Get smarter and more fundamental and reliable on the back end, in the slot, everywhere you really can with Branch to Jacksonville. I think Jags fans would love this pick.
I think he is their home run player, truly, to last all the way.
And I think he can make
24.
it here, by the way. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. That was quick. I don't know what you guys thought about that one, but you're on the clock again at 25 for the Giants.
There's really no other option.
I completely agree with it, and I'm terribly sad because I wanted to get to pick him. I love Brian Branch.
Yeah.
But it is a really good spot for him. And again, just like we talked about with Levis, Is he going to succeed? Yeah, come on. He's being slotted into a very talented defense that needs his particular skills, and he is going to come in and play at or above that level, which you can't say about a lot of rookie defenders, but I think you can pretty confidently with Brian Branch. So,
all right, what do you guys think about the Giants?
JMS just seems kind of too good to be true here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the one I've really liked.
Our top line is, it's just pick your flavor at center, and I think Schmitz fits with what they want to do. I also see them, depending on where they go, Tippmann would be good here, but if Schmitz is on the board, it's a hard argument to make to say we're going to go to Tippmann because we get that little extra bit of outside movement skill, which he is amazing at. I think probably the best in the draft at from the center class. But Schmitz is just so solid, so good at everything, so ready to plug and play. If he's there, yeah, no brainer. John Michael Schmitz.
All right.
26, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, we know the talk of town with this pick, Trevor. Everybody's looking at Bijan Robinson, it feels like, with Dallas. The floor is ours.
It is neat.
I actually would not go that route here with how the board is fallen.
Mm-hmm.
I would think about this being a landing spot for Nolan Smith. Personally.
Oh, I thought the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about the speed of that front.
I know. There's a reality that exists where you've got Nolan Smith, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
Good luck.
That's the play. I think that's our play in this spot.
I think that, I mean, Cansey be fun, but I don't think I'd take Cansey over Nolan Smith. Bijan, obviously, the connection's very easy, but again, I would take Nolan Smith over Bijan in this spot. I love the veteran additions. I love them trading for Brandon Cooks. Love them getting Stephon Gilmore in there. Yeah. Let's do it. Nolan Smith.
Let's do it. Nolan Smith to the Cowboys.
It's this weird.
We haven't had that one yet.
Yeah, we have not.
I love the match. The match is really nice with Smith, but it's this weird inverse relationship that we're getting to with running backs where we're like, there's so many good running backs that we're not going to pick them.
Yeah, right. Well, that's
just because we can do it later, right?
That's the sales pitch against, having a deep and talented running back class is where does the first one go off the board? And then truly, when does the avalanche happen after that? So,
yeah. And there's going to be players that are pushed down into the 4th, 5th round that have like true NFL starting level ability if they go to a team that's set up for their skill set. And it's just, that one is a fascinating subset of this whole draft.
It is indeed. Speaking of Bijan Robinson, you guys are on the board at number 27 with the Buffalo Bills.
Do I want to pick with my brain or my heart here, EJ?
Heart is going to get more views. What's your brain say?
Heart then.
My heart is Bijan.
Definitely the heart then.
Yeah, Bijan is our first line. And in the document we worked up, Bijan ? is the first line. I actually don't think he'll be used. Bijan, great player. Like, regardless of where he goes, Bijan, great player. One of the top probably 5 overall players in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
Like, great player. So this is not Bijan slander. Texas fans, stay away from me. I love him. I love Roshan. I love Moro Ojomo. Go away, Texas fans. I'm all good. No, Bijan, the Bills don't need it, right? They just
don't run the ball.
They don't have a traditional run game. They have very few opportunities. Would they have more with Bijan? Maybe. Is that a thing that they want to do? We haven't seen them do it in the past. So it almost, to me, feels a little bit wasted, right? Like, get Bijan to Cleveland, get Bijan to some place where they're going to run him a lot, right? And he wouldn't do that here. So that's the only reason against. Every other reason is for. He's a great runner. He's a great pass protector. He's going to contribute in the passing game outside of the running game. So it's a sort of automatic, but it's almost overkill just about the conversation we were having. And then what was your head pick if you didn't go heart with Bijan?
I mean, my head pick is Keanu Benton.
Yeah, that's mine too.
We saw what their main problem was towards the end of the year. Daquan Jones went out and they couldn't stop inside zone. It's like that massive problem for them. I will say, going back to Bijan temporarily,
sure,
running the ball hasn't been a thing that they did. They would come out the gate first half with like a 70% pass run ratio. What if they decide, now that we are into the meat of the Josh Allen contract. He's very expensive. He's very valuable. We are screwed without him. What if they decide to go the other way with it and actively try to preserve Josh Allen by not giving him short yardage and low red zone carries anymore, but they don't think that James Cook can do it? Like, they brought in Damian Harris, obviously, to do that type of stuff, but Damian Harris isn't going to do the stuff that Bijan does in the other 80% of the game. So, like, it makes sense to draft Bijan from a we need to preserve Josh standpoint, in addition to the fact that he's just a great player. Like we saw, we were in Buffalo for that Packers game, right? And
That's
like
right.
we saw kind of in that mid stretch of the year where after Josh had the elbow injury, they actually did start running the ball more, and they got better as an overall offense.
Yep.
And then as Josh got healthier, they slipped back into the habit of not running as much. But like, what if they make it a point in 2023, which is what I would advocate if I was in that building, and this is what we would do mock. What if we draft Bijan to save Josh? I kind of like that argument a lot, because I mean, Gibbs is not gonna do that kind of stuff for them. Like,
They have Cook,
a lot of
like the same thing, right?
it's
Like
the same thing. I mean,
In
Gibbs is
theory,
better, but
Yeah,
it's the same
I think
thing.
everybody would pick Gibbs over Cook, but in theory, it's kind of the same skill set.
Yep.
You know?
So I
I
like that
kinda feel like
argument
that.
for two reasons. One, the preservation of Josh Allen, which is going to need to occur. He's getting to the point where all those hits are going to add up. So I love that. And the philosophical shift that we have been banging the table for Buffalo to make after they gave us a peek of it last year, which is you got to go away from that. Don't go back to it. You're actually better with balance. This gives them the sort of ultimate option. And then the sort of third kicker is just player value. Okay, two players that we put up. We know that Keanu Benton would be awesome and serve a big need for them in the defense. Bijan versus Keanu Benton. Who's a better player? Just draft board agnostic. Like, it's not even close. It's Bijan. So player value, shifting the offense to a better balance, and protecting your largest asset, period, end all be all for the last 20 years. Sure.
Screw it. Bijan Robinson,
There
Buffalo
it is.
Bill.
I loved you guys talking it out.
Yes.
Honestly, like that's something that a lot of people talk about in the comments of something that they love a lot about the show is not just the selections that we've made on mock drafts of the past, but like they just go into the mind of Connor and I because we talk it out. And like, that was fantastic. This is one of the first times where like we get to sit back, obviously on our own show, and have that happen. And like, that was beautiful. That was fantastic. I loved how you guys approached that and how you got to the final pick and why you got to it. Cause I do think that running back, to go back to EJ's point, it's kind of taboo, right? It's like, oh yeah, this guy's good, but who's going to pick him? You know, like, are you going to be the one who picks him? And it's just like this thing where nobody wants to be the first to take a running back, even if he's just a damn good football player. So when people look at a mock draft and they go, oh, who'd they give the Bills? Oh, it's Bijan. Oh, that's bad. Then I would certainly encourage people to obviously go listen to the pod and hear conversations like that. If it's like, okay, well, we thought about the position of value thing. We had other players on the board that we believed could help out the Buffalo Bills. But at the end of the day, this is not only what the player does for a one in, one out individually at their specific position, but what they do to the offense and therefore the team overall. And I think that you guys just did a really good job explaining that. So that was a fun part of the podcast for me, for sure. We got the Cincinnati Bengals at number 28 now. Connor, anybody stick out to you? Because there's one player that I really like here at 28.
Yeah, it's one of the easier picks I think we can make. There's a consolation here. Like, I love the idea of Michael Mayer to the Bengals, but to me, I think it's DeJuan Jones when you look at their offensive line situation.
Okay.
It's great they got Orlando in there. I don't know where they're at with Lyle Collins. Are they going to move on from him or are they not? It doesn't sound like Jonah Williams has any interest in switching positions, so I'm not assuming he's playing right tackle. The Mayer pick is fun, but you can probably still get that tight end on day 2 of the draft. You're not going to get Michael Mayer. Let me make that very clear. You're not getting him, a player of his caliber, where they're picking again. But DeJuan Jones just seems like a no-brainer to bring some beef to the right side of the offensive line that could need some help.
I like DeJuan Jones. I like Michael Mayer.
You are in a totally different place. I'm kind of shocked by this.
That was not the one that I really liked still on the board.
Okay.
I like Kalijah Cansey.
I knew it. I knew it.
I like Kalijah Cansey because
he's my highest ranked player compared to those other guys. I think I have to look, but
because
they can't play this offensive line situation again.
But they've got Orlando Brown. And
yes, he's playing left tackle.
I know. I don't know exactly what's going on with Jonah Williams, but he
won't play right tackle.
He's still on the team.
That's what everyone's saying.
He might.
And he was bad. It's just sit him down.
Just sit him down and have him watch like inspirational football movies.
We need to protect Joe Burrow as a society. As a society, we need to protect Joe Burrow. Remember the Titans,
Friday Night Lights, Little Giants. I don't know. Like, just throw them all in a row.
We can take Cansey at 30 to the Eagles. Movies. You're playing us again.
I'm trying to make the Bengals better.
It was all there.
Respect the integrity of the exercise, Connor.
Oh my God. We had the dream draft for the Eagles.
Oh man.
We had it.
Listen. All I'm saying is we don't have to go with Kalijah Cansey. But Cincinnati's defensive line right now.
Okay.
Sam Hubbard, beef.
Yeah, good player.
DJ Reader, beef.
Very good player.
BJ Hill, beef.
Yeah.
Trey Hendrickson, beef. If they add Cansey anywhere along the defensive line, they have the size throughout, not just on the interior. Because I think a lot of people look at that and they go, oh, where could Cansey fit? Cansey can fit for the Eagles, obviously, and maybe we have him go to the Eagles because he's going to sit next to Jordan Davis. And Jordan Davis is going to take up a lot of bodies next to him. It's going to free him up. He can go one-on-one. Same argument with the Bucs, right? Seeing people put Kalijah Cansey to the Buccaneers because of Vita Vea being next to him. Some people look at the Detroit Lions and say, oh, Lee McNeil, he can move back to nose tackle, and therefore he can take up a couple of bodies. You're freeing up Kalijah Cansey in that way. I think the same situation exists with the Cincinnati Bengals, and not just because of the guys they have on the interior and Reader and Hill, but also they've got strength and size on the ends. So no matter what, you've got guys who can really be able to hold the point of attack and allow Kansas to truly pin his ears back and do exactly what he did at Pitt this past year, which made him one of our favorite prospects to watch. That's my rant. What do you think?
I'm never going to fight against Kalijah Cansey. Like, that is just something I'm not going to do.
That's a wise move.
I wouldn't fight him either.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what Bengals fans, how they react to this discussion.
Well, we're going to find out.
We're going to find out. So we're taking Kalijah Cansey.
Because I'm absolutely slamming Kalijah Cansey to the Cincinnati Bengals.
You've given me final say on a lot of picks. I have to give you that one. On a pick that I like. I just am still a little nervous.
All right, you guys are
I'll tell you what, Trev. TJ Watt, thanks you for your service.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Right.
He's going to enjoy those 10 pressures he gets against Cincinnati
again,
per game next year.
We're going to be talking about Jonah Williams pre-inspirational football movie marathon and post-inspirational football movie marathon. And they're going to be completely different players.
Jonah Williams is going what? 5th round pick to... Just kidding. All right. Guys are on the clock to the Saints, 29.
So the Saints are interesting because our list of potential players for the Saints is literally the longest out of any team.
Oh.
And it's got everything from Cansey to Mozzie Smith. Miles Murphy was on there. White, Adebawore.
Oh, Adebawore.
Oh, man.
Like the funniest thing about this is it's our longest list, but literally the first position is just like, yes, defensive line helps. So that's all of Cansey, Smith, Murphy, White, Ade. And then it's Brian Branch, Jordan Addison, and Quentin Johnson. So it's the first one we come to, like, where all those guys are off the board pretty much. And we either get flavor of defensive line that has not yet been selected, or you go a little bit off and you go to a guy like Cam Smith in the secondary and sort of add a corner. But again, in terms of rank and the depth of this class and defensive back, I think we stay with defensive line. Does that feel right, Brett? Or is there anybody else on the board that really just pulls your eye at this point? You go, well, come on, like, this guy's still there.
I mean, I kind of don't hate Michael Mayer here. I mean, you got Juwan Johnson and Adam Troutman, which is a tight end duo that I like, but I don't hate Michael Mayer just as a value pick, right? Offensive line is theoretically fine. Theoretically. Receiver could use some help, but most of them are gone.
Look at their interior defensive line.
I know, but I like the Colin Saunders pick up a lot.
Yeah, it helps for sure.
Keanu Benton. This could be a Keanu Benton spot.
Yes.
I am
It's
not
your-
against that in any way. Just like Connor's never gonna fight
Right, you
against Cansey.
Yeah, you don't fight against your
I'm-
guys.
I am a huge Keanu Benton guy because Keanu Benton's a huge guy that also brings you pass rush, but is a monster against the run and more. People sort of want to pigeonhole him coming from Wisconsin as being like, oh, he's a great run defender. Well, yeah, he is. But man, have you seen him get by people at that size? So Keanu Benton, I didn't expect him to still be on the board. He's one of those for me. And yeah, if he's here,
Yeah.
hard
Let's
to
lock
say
that
no.
in. He's just a
Yeah.
good player, right?
Yeah, he's a great player.
Don't pass on good players.
That should be the name of the game. And it feels like it gets overthought all the time. Keanu Benton going 29 to the New Orleans Saints. Connor, we're up at number 30. I put us in the predicament at number 30. So I don't know if you're going to make me get out of it, but what do you think here at 30?
Yeah, I actually think I am going to do exactly that.
Go get your
You know
shovel.
what?
Dig yourself
In
out of
fact-
this.
Yeah, in fact, I actually will leave you on an island here. I'll let you start with where your head is at, what you're thinking here. There is definitely a player still on the board that it's kind of hard to shy away from for Philadelphia here, but I kind of want to have you take the floor first.
I like Will McDonald. I liked I like BJ Ojulari. I like Adetomiwa Adebawore. I like all three of those guys for obviously what Ojulari and McDonald are specifically edge guys, but Adetomiwa Adebawore can be a versatile defensive lineman for you. They have a lot of good defensive linemen there, but you don't know how many of them are there long term, like Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett. Like, how long are those guys going to be there long term? So it makes sense for them to get an Ojulari or a Will McDonald, somebody like that. So I think that those guys are certainly options.
Surprised you didn't say Miles Murphy.
That's who I was thinking.
That's that's the one player that I have.
Miles Murphy too. I should throw Miles Murphy in there. You know, he's basically in the same thinking that Adetomiwa Adebawore is. So I would throw. Yeah, I would throw that. I would say, look, I'll narrow it down to two for you, and then you could pick, and I still think we'll be able to salvage this Eagles draft. Miles Murphy and I'll say Will McDonald are the two ones that I'm looking at.
I have Murphy ranked higher, and I think they go with the size with this pick.
Do you have Ojulari ranked above either of them?
I have Ojulari ranked above both of them.
Okay, so would you rather go Ojulari?
That's tricky. Ojulari is my 20th ranked player. Murphy's my 22nd. I think, once again, it goes back to them needing size in this defense. I would still lean Miles Murphy, and I know it's not as fun. It's not, but I feel pretty good about putting Miles Murphy on the field as a rookie and him being able to play the run, and he's going to figure it out in Philadelphia as a pass rusher in that room around those guys. That's the question we have with him, right? Can he consistently rush the passer? And this is a place where I actually think that light comes on for him, or has the best chance to.
Okay. All right, we'll go with it. Miles Murphy there at number 30. So, fellas, take us home.
Yeah, you get to close this thing out.
Kansas City Chiefs, 31.
This one lines up really well with the board and what we've talked about, but quickly on Miles Murphy, it's the same conversation we had about Howell earlier. Is after Venables left, Miles Murphy, different player. Like, if you go back, not last year, but year before,
yes,
how does that guy get out of the top 15? Like, he doesn't, based on 2 years ago's tape. This year, more questions after a big change in coaching there. But, again, Howie coming in, scooping, stealing, grabbing stuff that's still there.
That's what the Eagles do.
Love the pick. Yeah, it's exactly what the Eagles do. But with Chiefs, I'm going to let you talk to this one, Brett, but I think we're in the same place, and it's just pick a flavor.
This is actually one of the hardest ones we've had because I'm picking between my children. I'm looking at Will McDonald and Felix Anudike-Uzomah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I
Can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
Oh, okay. We went a different way there.
What were you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking tackle. We had talked about this, that again,
we talked about this.
Andy Reid, come on.
Oh, like replacing Yang, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Andy Reid, when in doubt, is going to take a tackle. And there's, two tackles I think that would fit here. It's a question of whether or not you think you can swap Bergeron left to right, who's the guy we talked about. He has the right demeanor to fit with that line. Like, one of the things you see on Bergeron's tape is, he likes to finish guys. He likes to bury dudes. But you got DeJuan Jones, who is this traits monster, who is the same way. If he gets his hands on you, he loves to just drop on top of you and smush you. And that's going to go, I mean, come on, imagine that line, right? With either one of those guys. and filling in at right tackle with who they already have, right? We got Creed and Trade, but like that's a monster line.
What happened to Darian Kennard?
He's
I
there.
thought it was injuries, right? Didn't he have something with his knee?
I want to say knee.
I know he was beat up, but it's like when did he get drafted 5th, 6th round? What was it?
Yeah.
It was a bad call.
Wildly low. And I think it was medical related.
It was red flag for sure.
But I mean, is he even an option? Because like I liked Kennard when he was out there and he was playing. So it's almost like, oh, the Chiefs have an offensive tackle opening. 0 people are talking about Darian Kennard, it feels like. Maybe I'm just not as tuned in with the Chiefs as I need to be, but that's surprising to me.
It's a question of whether or not they're going to be able to get over that and count on him. And I don't know the answers to that question because I'm not tied in, but it is an interesting question. And just for that reason, Brett, let's pivot back to 2 players who I do really like. And you said McDonald or Felix. Felix would be super fun here because of both his rush play style, but also, come on, he played at Kansas State. Like,
yeah, it's K-State guy.
It's the shortest commute ever. We both love him as a player. I would green stamp that one immediately.
So one thing, since you brought up tackle, one thing I have in the back of my head, if we went DeWand here, right, we're getting 5 years of contract control on a massive, long right tackle. I would do that if you believe that we will get one of the following edges in the second round: Will McDonald, Felix, Ojulari, Tui Tuipulotu, Derek Hall.
You're definitely going to get, I think you're going to get
Byron Young, Yasir, we can get in the third.
You could, I wonder what Connor thinks here, but I feel like you could get Derek Hall or Byron Young at least at 63.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Possibly Thule, depending. I think
if we're just going for a duo,
a
duo of picks here,
right? Tackle
it's
is
kind of the same thing we did earlier. You start with tackle, you come back for edge, right?
Yeah,
that feels like a strong thought process.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Is that if we wait, who are the tackles we're going to get after that sort of Bergeron drop off? And you're talking about the Blake Freelands of the world. Yeah. Like there's some guys we like, but they feel a whole lot more developmental. I agree that DeJuan Jones is right on that sort of developmental. He's more traits than he is player right now, but the ceiling is redonkulous. And all the edge guys, come on, one of those guys is going to be there. If you're comfortable with all of them, I love what Connor said about the stack, right? You got DeJuan Jones and then the best remaining edge rusher, as opposed to any of those edge rushers, your prime pick. And then what at tackle at 62?
Yeah.
Or 60.
I think we've talked ourselves into it. How about we just be safe, protect
DeJuan
the $500 million man. Yeah. I mean, because like we're screwed if Pat goes down anyway, right? So let's just do whatever we can to make that not happen.
All right, we locking it in?
I agree. We are. We're going to lock in DeJuan Jones to close this thing out. And man, that line becomes an absolute bulldozer unit.
Woo! All right. Well, I wasn't gonna name off every single selection, but this mock draft is one of my favorites that we have done over the last month and a half. So I will, and maybe Ryan, if you're listening, you can put the image up on the screen for the people on YouTube. But number 1 overall, obviously remember the Bootleg boys pick for the odds. Connor and I picked for the evens. Number 1 overall, CJ Stroud of the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young went 2 to the Texans. Anthony Richardson in a trade up went number 3 to the Atlanta Falcons. Will Anderson went to the Colts at number 4 in a situation in which we think they are getting Lamar Jackson. Tyree Wilson to the Seahawks at 5. Jalen Carter to the Lions at 6. Devon Witherspoon to the Raiders at 7. Christian Gonzalez then went to the Arizona Cardinals as the second part of that trade at number 8. Peter Skoronski to the Bears at number 9. Jackson Smith-Njigba to the Eagles at 10. Create an unbelievably fun offense that will absolutely be banned in Madden anytime that you're playing online. The other person will just leave the lobby if you pick the Eagles. Paris Johnson Jr. to the Titans at 11. Joey Porter Jr. to the Texans at 12. Broderick Jones to the Jets at 13. Nailed that one, boys. Van Ness to the Patriots at 14. Dalton Kincaid to Packers at 15. Deontay Banks to Washington at number 16. Darnell Wright, Steelers at 17. Darnell Washington, Lions at 18. Anton Harrison to the Bucks at 19. Jordan Addison to the Seahawks at 20. Zay Flowers to the Chargers at 21. Quentin Johnson to the Ravens at 22. Rolling with Snoop Huntley. Actually, Snoop Connor is actually a real name that I just messed up there. But there we go.
Former draft name.
Yeah, they're just stupid, pointless names in my head. Will Levis finally comes off the board to the Minnesota
You are
Vikings
a Viking.
at 20. You are Minnesota Viking. Brian Branch to the Jags at 24. John Michael Schmitz to the Giants at 25. Nolan Smith to the Dallas Cowboys at 26. Bijan Robinson goes to the Bills at 27. Kalijah Cansey to Connor Chagrin to the Cincinnati Bengals at 28. Keanu Benton gets in the first round at 29 to the Saints. Miles Murphy to the Eagles at 30. And then DeJuan Jones at 31 to the Kansas City Chiefs to bring us home. Fellas, that was awesome. That was so much fun. It wasn't quite 5 hours, but this is definitely the longest episode that we have ever done. And it was a beauty at that. Thank y'all so much for joining us. This was an absolute blast. We appreciate y'all so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys were phenomenal. It was really fun to just talk through the different processes. And obviously, Trevor and I kind of aligned with you guys. Talk about stacks, talk about the second round. I think that's why there's, maybe the biggest problem with mock draft content in the world is so many people do operate them understandably like there's no other picks in the draft. And I think something we did a really good job of today is kind of outlining, here's what you can get on day 2 and here's what you can't. And that thought process will trickle into the round 1 room.
I love being able to do this kind of thing. It makes us all better, certainly makes us better. I don't think people realize how much of this work you do in a silo, how much of it's in your own head, staring at your own screen, your own little echo chamber, and to be able to open it up. We're both lucky to have partners that we can do it with, and then to expand that even further and double it is a real treat for us. So thank you for sharing all that knowledge with us as well.
As always, guys, let us know what you thought of the mock drafts. Hit us up in the comments. The YouTube comments is the best way to do that. We've had some awesome discussions in that way before, and I'm sure the comments will fly on this one. So we're going to get in the conversations as much as we possibly can. If you're audio only, you can follow me and Connor, at least at Tampa Bay Trey, at Connor J. Rogers, the same thing on Instagram. But more importantly than that, y'all, please follow Brett and EJ. They do incredible work both individually and together on Bootleg Football. You can see that over on their YouTube channel. That is the name, Bootleg Football. You can follow them both individually at Football EJ, if that tells you how serious the man is about his craft, on Twitter. You can follow Brett Kollmann as well, at Brett Kollmann. You can follow those guys individually on YouTube too. So y'all, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. This has been so much fun. Connor and I are going to be back with you on Thursday to give you our final quarterback rankings for the 2023 NFL Draft. It's a big week on the show. You're not going to want to miss that. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Connor Roger. For Brett Kollmann and EJ Snyder, thank you guys so much for watching the NFL Stock Exchange Podcast. We'll see you next time.